Welcome to the Pool Nation podcast, where it's all pool talk. And we ain't talking about netting and jetting or splashing and dashing. We're talking about becoming a nation of pool pros. We talk about the latest products, trends, and training in the pool industry. Now let's welcome your host. With over a decade of industry insider experience and still the reigning champion of Marco Polo, Edgar De Jesus. With his co-host, the fastest netter in the West, John Chikalis, and Zach, the pool boy Nicholas.
Hey guys, welcome to the Pool Nation Live podcast with myself, your host, Edgar De Jesus. And yes, I am the reigning champion of Marco Polo, along with JJ Flawless, the fastest netter in the West, and Zach, the pool boy Nicholas. And this week with our guest, the one and only Jared Schwab from Alpha West. I want to welcome everybody to our live podcast, the podcast where it's all pool talk, guys. We ain't talking about netting or jetting or splashing and dashing. We're talking about becoming a nation in pool pros. And yes, we will talk about the latest products, trends, and training in the pool industry. Before we get started today, I want to thank our sponsors for this podcast, the Ultimate Pool Tools and Pool Invoice. We want to thank them for their support. John, good morning.
Good morning, Edgar. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic and pretty excited. Podcast number 3. We have Jared, who's going to be dropping some knowledge. Really looking forward to it.
It's kind of crazy. I look back and I go, wow, we're already in week number 3.
Yeah, crazy.
It's just the time flies. So, hey, I do want to thank you. I know that you jumped in on the Instagram Live and you saved me there because I had some stuff to do. And I went back and watched it and I'm like, man, you killed it.
Well, I survived. I didn't make a complete fool of myself, but I think we got through it. Terry Arco just nailed it out of the park. I mean, he has a lot of knowledge too, and I think he did a really good job explaining the differences in chlorine and why liquid chlorine and the benefits of it, and trichlor, dichlor, and all that. So exactly what we were trying to accomplish. I think he nailed it on the head, and I just want to say thank you again to Terry and to Hassa for taking the opportunity to do that with us.
Yeah, it was a great Instagram Live. I really liked it. It was kind of fun for the first time to kind of sit back and watch it kind of from the other side and how we've come. So that's great. So
yeah, or
anyway,
seeing me at the beginning yawning because I wasn't too sure if it was recording. I forgot it was recording, and I'm sitting there waiting for people to jump on, and I'm just sitting there yawning. It was kind of funny.
Hey, we all learn, my friend. We all learn. Hey, Jared, good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the Pool Nation Live podcast, especially in its early stage. So, obviously we're doing this at a turbulent time, and the country's in the middle of a pandemic and fires raging and weather events all over the place, which my prayers go out to everyone listening that has been affected. But I am super appreciative of being able to join you guys this morning.
Great. We're super excited to have you on, guys. And Jared is Jared Schwab from Alpha West. And this gentleman here has a ton of knowledge, and I'm super excited to have him on the podcast today. I know that you're out in Arizona. How's the weather out in Arizona?
Yeah, so we're still 100-degree plus temperatures. The summer has definitely tested everybody that lives in Arizona, especially the pool professionals, as we've had 110-degree plus temperatures, I think, for 50 plus days now during the summer. Not consecutively, but over the course of the summer, we've had extreme heat.
That's just crazy. Of course, I'm sitting here in Texas, which is supposed to be very hot, and we had a very mild summer. I even had a friend that moved out here is doing pools, and he's kind of looking at me going, you always talk about how hot it is in Texas, and it's not hot. I'm like, dude, you're just lucky is what you are.
Well, tell him to take a visit to Arizona if he wants to experience the heat.
If you wanted to.
Yeah, I think John had a couple of days out there, huh, John, that were up in the 120s.
If you want to experience heat like at 122, 124, head over my way, Jared.
Will do.
That's crazy. So, hey, Jared, for our listeners that are out there today, I want you to tell them a little bit about who you are, what you do. And I think a lot of them are really, as soon as you start saying some of the products that you represent, are going to know exactly kind of the companies. But I want them to get just a little bit of background of you and what you do with Alpha West.
Sure. So I was born in New York, raised in New York and Arizona. So that's a little bit of where I come from. I joined Alpha West in the fall of 2007 as a support role for the rep that was covering the Arizona and Nevada market at that time. So I mainly supported the major builders in the market at the time. They had large retail operations as well, so I could be in a retail store doing training, helping assist, to being out on a job site, helping with the installation, programming, et cetera, of products we represent. Then in 2009, the individual that was in Arizona and Nevada exited the company, and I became the rep for that territory all the way until 2012. At that point, the opportunity presented itself to go work the Los Angeles market, the greater Los Angeles market, which I took, and was a rep out that way till 2018. 2018, I was fortunate enough to be offered a partnership in the firm. So I relocated back to Arizona because I knew I would be traveling 3 weeks out of the month till the pandemic occurred. And relocated back and started a family here, and now I have a 16-month-old daughter. So that's kind of my background, where I started, where I'm at now. I travel all 13 states in which we operate in during normal times to work with all the individuals on our team in developing the products we represent. As far as Alpha West is concerned, we're an independent rep agency. So manufacturers hire us to be their product specialist, their sales force in the marketplace. The firm has been around since 1979. We've been fortunate to represent many, many great manufacturers, and several of the ones we represent today are part of the original portfolio. So it's been an exciting run.
That is awesome. Absolutely awesome. That's a great career, great path, and obviously partnership in there too. And 16-month-old daughter. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So, Jared, did you hear about the fire at the Biolab plant in Atlanta this week?
So I did hear about the disruption at the Biolab facility. This one, I believe, was a chemical reaction, while we had a fire during the hurricane at a different facility. While everybody likes to talk about these headlines being the reason for chemical disruption, I do believe it's important that the marketplace understand that there's several other factors driving shortages. These situations that occurred recently have only created velocity to that situation. The main issue I think we should talk about is labor. It's gotten harder and harder for manufacturers to hire personnel. I think even pool companies are seeing that challenge as well. What that's doing is as demand continues to increase for products within the pool industry, given the home builders building more homes, people staying at home, demand for new pools are happening, and we're also experiencing driver shortages for the freight companies. We're continuing to see supply come offline while demand increases, and that's just a perfect soup for the equation of having an additional shortage, price increases, so on and so on.
In the last podcast, we talked about making sure that the guys out there have a plan to deal with this chlorine shortage, and we've been talking about it, and we've been letting them know. And so what I see is 4 things that I think can happen, right? Is one is they have to look for other chemicals. So if they use tabs or whatever, whether it's liquid or cal hypo. 2, which would be a different method of chlorination, and that'd be salt system or adding a liquid feed or something like that. 3, that they take the loss because they have to pay for the price of these chemicals, and we'll get into detail about what we see that price point being. And then number 4, they send a letter to the customers, the rate increase. But I don't see any other scenarios out there for the pool guy. So, what's your take on this situation that the industry is going through? And in all these years that you've been through in the pool industry, have you seen a shortage like this?
So in the 13 years as a product representative, I have not seen a product shortage like this. The lack of access to, stabilized chlorine, being the most popular one being the 3-inch trichlor tab sold in a 50-pound bucket, is definitely going to cause disruption to many organizations. I think this is an important time for all of us to get together and discuss the pros and cons to all the alternative options. And you mentioned a few of them, cal hypo, chlorine generators, salt systems, liquid feed systems, UV ozone, and the list continues to go on and on.
And I think it's our job to really kind of grab a lot of the pool pros out there and kind of try to, let them see or let them know what it is that we're seeing, but also try to educate them on all these other products that are out there. And that could be whether it's liquid chlorine or cal hypo, but really kind of go from A to Z on every single product as they make that, that transition. But I'm getting still from phone calls from areas where they're telling me, look, the distributor has sent us an email saying we don't have any tabs, we don't have any trucks on the way, and no, we can't transfer any of those anywhere. So I see that obviously it's what we were thinking, that there is a shortage, but I think we start looking at what can be the cost increase long term of this, right? There's other manufacturers that will step in, that will manufacture it at a higher rate. But what are you able to see? Because you're kind of on the back end of it with Alpha West and being able to see from the distributor and the manufacturer side.
Yeah, so we're definitely seeing price increases implemented going into the fourth quarter of the year and then into 2021. There's no getting around that. A lot of that is both driven by lack of supply, but the continued increase in labor as people have to, or manufacturers have to pay signing bonuses, higher wages, overtime, etc., to meet the demand currently in the marketplace. Additionally, as far as the restrictions go that some of the professionals may be experiencing, the manufacturers are also putting in restrictions for the distributors on what they're going to be able to access per order. So really, it's a complete chain reaction. It's not the distributors trying to be the bad guy. It's not the manufacturers trying to be the bad guy. It's just simply everybody trying to keep up with demand while supply is restrained.
Have you been able to hear or know any, price point that they would be looking at with regards to the chemicals?
Yeah, based on the conversations I've had with many, many individuals on the manufacturing side and also in the marketplace, such as contractors like yourselves, it seems like the price has already approached about $120 for a 50-pounder in many markets. Many people believe it's going to settle somewhere between $120 and $150. But a lot of that is just based on theory at this point. We're going to continue to see more demand increases, and nobody really knows what that is as pool builders are booked out, 6-9 months for new pools. Commercial facilities are going to continue to open back up. So we're going to see more and more demand as we head into 2021.
So in talking about that, obviously my brain kind of keeps jumping into, okay, how do I prepare? As a business guy, how do I prepare? I think this is the time to take action. So, and I know you've been in the industry for a long time, so I want to get your thoughts on what would be possible solutions. So if you were to talk to me as a pool guy, maybe you give me an option that I can implement, and that could be, obviously whether it's liquid feeders or salt systems or UV, but our goal is to talk about bringing that awareness to the guys, and hopefully they take action before the next swim season. Because I think what's going to happen is we're going to go down a little bit in the demand. A lot of the guys aren't going to need a lot of it. So some of them might be willing to pay that $120, but just like every time, spring will come up a lot faster than we think. So what do you think are some of the solutions or options for us, the pool guys?
Sure. Well, fortunately, as being part of Alpha West, we get to represent a ton of different solutions. So I don't have to have a bias towards one. I can really talk about the broad portfolio of options that are out there and then bring them into some of the products we represent. So that's, gives us a lot of ability to find the right solution. Right now, we're experiencing a high level of phone calls regarding the Rollichem pump solution. And this is popular because it uses liquid that's relatively inexpensive compared to some of the other options out there. And the pump allows you to do daily dosing, keeping a baseline of chlorine in the pool all the time. Many professionals know if you go to service a pool on Monday and the homeowner decides to have a 25-person kid party on Saturday and you didn't add enough chlorine on Monday to handle that, you're coming back to a mess on the next Monday visit. So having the Rollichem pump in place, adding daily, and having the ability to make an adjustment on the fly, whether that's the homeowner or you circling back to crank that bad boy up, you would be able to have enough chlorine in that water so that when you return on Monday the following week, you don't come back to a murky pool or green pool or whatever may occur due to that bather loading of organics in the water.
So, and guys, Jared, one of his products on his portfolios is obviously the Rollichem, and that's really popular one. Very easy product to install, by the way. I've put them in, and they're very easy to install. So that's definitely, I think, a great option out there. So what else do you have other products? So I know that you have some, trichlor and stuff that you obviously are part of submitting to the distribution, but do you have any other products like Cal-Hypo or any of that?
Yeah, so, and to finish off on the liquid, in each market, there's certain individuals that have adopted this. I know Greg Beard out in California, Dean and Big Family Pools in Arizona. So there's some people to connect with within this group that can help, support the application side of things, in addition to the reps that represent Rollichem throughout the country. So there's rep firms that support this brand and many brands throughout the entire country. Alpha West handling the West Coast and having 9 individuals to support everybody out there. But there's a lot of wealth of knowledge to support that application if that's what somebody desires. Touching on trichlor, yes, we represent the Segura family of product. Probably the most popular label for trichlor within that is the GLB brand. So yes, I do sell trichlor when it's available to be sold. So that is one of the many options within the portfolio. But yes, we also do Cal-Hypo, and the CCH brand is the one that we promote most often now because of the Class 2 slow dissolve tablets that are now available, which is much safer than the Class 3 granular stuff that people are familiar with. So that option is becoming more and more popular, and it's used mostly with an offline feeder that you run 1 to 4 GPM through. It's fairly easy to use and a great solution in addition to some of the other ones out there.
Gotcha. Now, I know on the Rollichems, you guys have made some great changes, at least since the last time that I had used the Rollichems. What changes have you made to the Rollichem?
So the most recent change would be going from the legacy product that people are familiar with, which mostly have a gray body, blue face, and an analog dial. We've gone to a black unit with a little bit different profile. Same roller, same motors, same tube, so it's easy to get parts for, but we have changed the board to an all-digital board that's percentage-based. So you're able to lock in if you have a 12-gallon per day pump and you want to add 10%, 1.2 gallons, we can lock that in exactly where you want as far as daily dosing goes. So the advancement in the digital board, you can do that with the older style analog, but you're preset at certain settings. You don't have as much of a variety as far as set points go.
Jared, Edgar, I want to ask a question about the Rollichem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as far as when it comes down to the Rollichem, we've been hearing a lot about it, but primarily they've been around for a while, but they're more for a commercial application is what they've been seen or looked at before. Introducing into like a residential application where they're outside, What are some of the challenges, or what's Rollichem? Do they have anything in the works when it comes down to protecting it from the elements on the outside? Because I've gotten some feedback where when you install the Rollichems outside, that there might be some degradation to the hoses, or the clamps might be somewhat of an issue. Is that something that Rollichem is looking to do or improve, or is there maybe an outside unit that might be in the works? Or
Yeah, so being that it's now exposed to the UV element of things from the sun, we have noticed some things. I think the biggest one has been, and you brought it up, is the nylon clips. Don't have UV inhibitors in them, so they will fail outside. Several have gone to a metal clamp. Those work obviously very effectively. Rollichem is taking a look at that. There's also been recent conversations that have been had with Mark Lynch over at Rollichem, who's excellent, about creating some sort of cover for the actual pump itself to protect from the elements. So yes, all that's being taken into consideration. The product was bulletproof for the commercial environment, where we see a lot more indoor facilities. Now that we're getting more and more residential, we have to come out with an outdoor kit, and it's definitely in the works. In the meantime, if you do buy a pump and you're putting it outside, ditch the nylon clamps and go to metal clamps.
And try to put it in, you'd recommend try to put in like a shady area, right? Or cover it if at all possible while it's out there.
Yes, in Arizona, we try to, put things on walls where we're not having as much sun exposure. But that can be difficult at times given the positioning of the home and so on and so on.
And again, nothing's perfect, right? I mean, every solution has pros and cons. We're just trying to make it so that everybody understands. If you guys are putting it out in residential applications, and it's a hot, sunny place, and there are some chances that things can go haywire.
Absolutely. And you're going to have, certain areas like probably, and the ones that I used to do in California, and mine were all outdoor. And I really never had a lot of that issue. I think that might be a little bit more areas like Arizona, where probably it gets a little bit hotter and stuff like that. Now, Jared, if somebody's listening that's a pool guy and they're thinking, okay, I want to look at the Rollichem and I want to go and install some of them in my residential, which one would you recommend? I know, excuse me, I know you have different models, but which one would you recommend for the pool guy looking at it for a residential setup?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the new Pro Series because of the ability to dial it in a little bit more than the Legacy Series. However, you will not go wrong with the Legacy Series. I mean, I would say that, even today, 95% of the product sold is still the Legacy Series. As far as pump specifics, it's more based on the gallonage of the swimming pool. We have a 1, 12, 38, and a 77 gallon per day pump. So we really need to figure out the demand of that pool before I make a suggestion on which pump size to go with.
Gotcha. And then I know that you guys offer a lot of other, products with regards to UV and ozone. So what do you have on your portfolio from that standpoint?
Yeah, so the third option to discuss, so we've discussed liquid as an alternative. We've discussed Cal Hypo as an alternative. The other solution is a chlorine generator, a salt system. And CMP, who we represent, has purchased the SGS Breeze system, renamed it as the Power Clean salt system. That is a very effective way to make sure you're constantly getting chlorine delivered to the body of water. Maintenance is required, watching pH is required. So some additional things are required to make sure that system runs effectively. They have also, CMP being an acquirer of Del Ozone, also has the AOP technology, UV technology, and ozone technology. And all of those technologies will cut the chlorine demand. So they are a great supplement to support what we want chlorine to do, which is act as a sanitizer in the body of water and not be used up for oxidation.
we look at those, and I'm going to ask you here in a minute or two about the UV and the ozone, because I think even I still get to the point where I get a little bit of confusion on that. And those are obviously to supplement your other systems. So if you have a salt system or a chlorine system, those, you can't obviously use just as a primary source. And I know that you guys have a couple other products, and I'm going to come back in a second and ask you about the difference between that ozone and that UV. But what other products do you have? So I know that you have the Rollichem, you have the salt system, the UV, the ozone. Who are we leaving out?
Well, a big one that many professionals endorse and love is the PoolRx product. The reason why the PoolRx product is popular is it's basically a 6-month algicide, and it fights the microalgae aggressively in the water. And microalgae absorbs, or it's the biggest absorber of our chlorine in the body of water. So having the PoolRx mineral present in the body of water definitely reduces chlorine demand. Beyond that, we have enzymes and other products in the portfolio from our manufacturers that will go after organics and things like that, all supporting chlorine's job of acting as the sanitizer in the body of the water. The less we can ask of chlorine, the more effective chlorine will actually be at what we want its job to be.
That's absolutely key.
Speaking of PoolRx, let's take a minute to thank our sponsors.
Yeah, absolutely. Jared, I'm going to run something here for the sponsors. And on the other side, what I'd like you to do is kind of explain to us the difference between UV and ozone, because I think that's something even I still struggle with completely understanding what they both do. So let's just take a second here, and right on the other side, we will talk about that.
The sound of you continually pitching pool care poles into the trash. The sound of you using an Ultimate Pool Tools carbon fiber pool care pole for years to come. Go to ultimatepooltools.com or Instagram at Ultimate Pool Tools. Introducing Pool Invoice. Pool Invoice is pool billing software that was created specifically for the pool service and repair industry. It was developed for our industry and only our industry. Pool Invoice was built with recurring billing in mind. You can print, email, text invoices, or even send via WhatsApp. You can add reoccurring or yearly charges, accept credits, and set up autopay. You can even see when customers have seen the invoice. It even has a customer portal where they can log in and see, print, and pay invoices. It has all of your customers' information on one page, so you don't need to search through hundreds of invoices looking for the one you need. Just go to the customer's profile, and it's all at your fingertips. It's currently in beta phase, so anyone can use it for free. Just go to poolinvoice.com and request an invitation at the bottom of the page. Pool Invoice was made for you.
All right, guys, we're back. So, Jared, I think even I still have a little bit of a hard time understanding, the UV and the ozone. And I think that's one of the biggest questions that I get asked all the time. Hey, how does the UV work? What's the difference between the ozone? And maybe you can kind of explain to us a little bit of the difference of those two.
Yeah. So much of the confusion exists around the fact that there's UV ozone systems and UV disinfectant systems. So understanding that a UV bulb can actually be used in both systems is the first step. However, the UV bulb in an ozone system is creating ozone, and then we're using an injection or a Venturi vacuum to introduce ozone into the system as an oxidizer. In the case of these UV disinfectant systems, which Pantera makes, Dell makes, and several other manufacturers make, the water is actually passing over the bulb actively. And what's happening here is the UV rays are changing the DNA and RNA of those particular organisms, making them non-harmful. So the main difference is that an ozone system, whether it uses UV technology or corona discharge technology to produce ozone, ozone's actually being introduced into the system. It's actually a product that we're introducing, where when we get to UV disinfectant, that's where we're actively running water over the system and using the UV bulb and its rays to be a disinfectant at that point. So those are the main differences between the two UV systems. And then we've moved into a world of AOP. And AOP takes ozone and UV, combines it in one cabinet. And what's happening there is we're now taking ozone, injecting it into the system, into the water, and then putting it through a UV chamber afterwards, passing that water right over the bulb. And that's creating a hydroxyl-free radical, which is a very technical way of describing the most advanced oxidizer out there. So we're just continuing to take the load off chlorine. For those that don't know, 60 to 80% of chlorine is used up through the oxidation process, and whatever's left over is your sanitizer. So putting these systems in place takes that oxidation responsibility off the chlorine.
So I could say, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, so I could say that really the UV and the ozone systems are basically going to be more of an oxidizer than anything else.
The ozone and AOP units would be an oxidizer. A UV system is a disinfectant. So that's actually killing the microorganisms by changing its DNA and RNA. And I don't want to get too technical there and create more confusion, but those are basically the differences. Both are very effective solutions. However, it needs to be considered that we're not running these pumps 24/7, 365, which is why we can't eliminate chlorine. We need an active sanitizer in the water when the pump's off. So a lot of people like to talk about the reduction, which is true. The elimination is much harder because we, once again, don't run our pumps 24/7, 365. That's the only way these systems are working. They're back on the equipment pad. We have to get water flowing for them to be effective.
Now, is there a certain flow for these systems to work? So if it flows too fast or if it goes the other opposite direction too slow, that they wouldn't work? Or you can set one of these UVs up and run it on a single speed motor and not have any worries?
So there is GPM parameters. Each manufacturer is going to have different ratings based on their system. As far as ozone and AOP technology goes, there's mixing vessels because the longer you allow for the contact time of whether it's ozone or the hydroxyl-free radicals inside a chamber, the more effective the product's going to be overall. So slowing down flow and creating more contact time with those particular systems is very, very, very important.
I got a question.
Sure.
So as far as like a new pool guy walks into a backyard or picks up a new account and sees this Dell ozone unit there and has a UV system and sees a light and a little tube going into a return line, and it says, okay, I have ozone. How does somebody know it's working? How do you measure it? Or how do you know the unit needs to be repaired or if it's doing what it needs to do? Or do you just look at the UV light and say, hey, I see a purple light or a blue light? And then you look at the ozone unit on the wall and you see like a little green light lit up and you're thinking that it's working, or you got a little bit of air coming in from the return jets. Because I think the issue is, because I get a lot of guys that'll ask and say, hey, okay, I have this ozone unit here, and it's one thing to sell it and to have it into a pool, but it's another thing to look at and go, how do I maintain it, or how do I even know this thing is doing what it's supposed to be doing?
Yeah, great question. So the lights that you're describing, those are only indicators of the electronics working, such as the UV bulb being lit or looking at the modules inside an ozone system and seeing that they're lighting up. So that's really telling us electrically we have power and systems functioning. I think what most people are concerned about, and you're addressing here, is the effectiveness of the product, regardless of whether or not it's on or off. So with that said, I think we go into the conversation of, parts per million versus ORP, and one being a volume measurement and one being an effective measurement. So companies have come out with handheld ORP meters. If you truly want to know the difference between what ozone or hydroxyl free radical is doing to the body of water using one of those ORP instruments to measure what is the oxidation reduction potential of the water would tell you how effective those systems are. From a mechanical side, you want to check the bulb. You want to make sure it's working. You want to make sure it's clean. You want to make sure if you're using a venturi that you take the hose off and you're actually getting suction at that venturi to introduce the product into the system. Most of them will have a ball valve or a check valve, making sure that's occurring. You may have to make some adjustments. You may need to replace the check valve depending on how long that system's been in place, as well as the bulbs on a UV part of the system will over time lose their effectiveness, so they'll need to be replaced. That's based on run hours, and the modules for the ozone will also eventually give out, and those will have to be replaced. I think that's the comprehensive picture of everything you were asking.
Yeah, so that brings up a good point. So just because a UV light is on doesn't mean it's working, correct?
Yeah, so UV lights over time will lose their effectiveness based on age. So knowing when the product was installed, knowing how long the pump's been ran will help determine how effective that bulb is being at that point in time. So knowing some of the background about the pool would help. Fortunately, UV bulbs are not that expensive to replace. So if you're taking over a pool and the homeowner doesn't really know, but they know they paid a ton for this when they built their pool, my suggestion would be, let's get a new bulb in there. Let's make sure the system's running at 100%.
Yeah, this is a great topic, and I don't know about you, John, but the pool geek in me starts coming out and getting all excited. I think there's a lot of topics that need to be broken down so that we can obviously explain that to everybody. And I still have some confusion over it. I know that next week we're going to have Mike from Pentair, which is the product manager for the BioShield. But there's a lot of great things here that still need to be talked about and kind of brought out to the field so that the guys are really comfortable with these systems and not just be able to sell them, but be very, very educated on them. These systems, though, basically playing the function of the oxidizer are really kind of something that has to supplement your chlorine input, right?
Yeah, again, the main reason for that. So if we go around the world, we'll see systems that have very large ozone systems on the pools. And in those environments, they'll run a very low chlorine level. And that's because they're running those pumps 24/7, 365. So the longer we run our pumps, and we're getting longer because of the fact that variable speeds are starting to take off everywhere. And, another topic for your podcast is probably the regulation regarding variable speed pumps coming next year. But as we see the entire United States be on variable speed pumps and running low speed for longer durations, so instead of running, the rule I learned coming into the industry is 1 hour per every 10 degrees ambient air temperature. So, that puts us somewhere between, 7 hours and 12 hours in Arizona most of the time of the year. But we're starting to see people run their pools 16 to 20 hours. Because of that, these systems will be more effective because they're acting as an oxidizer for 20 hours rather than 8. So that's going to dramatically cut down the chlorine demand, regardless of what chlorine solution you choose to use.
Yeah, and guys, I think this is very important, and this is another key thing, that we need to look at, because going into obviously a chlorine shortage or the high cost, one of these would really help you kind of supplement and kill some of that cost that the pools would need when it comes to the chlorine itself. So when you see these systems put in out there, what is the most common sidekick that they're being used with regards to a chlorinator? Are you seeing it more with salt system, liquid chlorine? What's the more common one?
At this time, it's liquid and a salt system would be the two most popular combo units that are out there in the marketplace, with one of these additional UV ozone AOP technologies on the equipment pad. And I think that's being driven by aftermarket sales of, salt systems from the environment in which they produce, softer water, so on and so on, and liquid as far as, a price point. So those are two add-ons. From the new construction side, we're seeing all sorts of stuff now. And you'll still see a lot of, as you guys know, a lot of tab feeders put in at new construction because putting in a erosion feeder is relatively inexpensive compared to some of these other technologies.
Yeah, I think the market here in Texas, at least where I'm at, is you get all these brand new pool builds, and they all have tab feeders. I would say like 99%, and I think that's kind of the route that customers tend to go with. And there's another topic that we haven't even hit on. So, we're talking and we're trying to get the guys to understand what other options are out there. And so, we talk about the liquid chlorine, we talk about the Cal Hypo. I think it's a good time for the pool guys and the pool pros out there to kind of realize a little bit of the side effect of those tabs and those chlorines. And now that you're going to look at it and say, hey, I need to make a decision and transition to something else, I think that conversation needs to be had a little bit about the CYA that these tabs are and the dry chlorine is leaving into each pool. And I know that in the commercial aspect of it, it's talked a lot more because obviously there's regulations, but from the residential side, we don't see as much as that. So what's your take with regards to CYA a little bit? Maybe we could talk about that a little bit to the guys.
Sure. Well, we could start out with the fact that cyanuric acid has a benefit, and at some point it loses its benefit. But when you reference the commercial world, the Model Aquatics Health Code is kind of becoming the standard that states are adopting. And the levels of CYA allowed continue to be pushed down and down and down. And the reason for that is they want to know if, a fecal contamination being one of the worst, or cryptosporidium, which happened in, Arizona a few years ago and other places, splash pads, things like that are known for that stuff getting into the system. They want to know that you are going to get the fastest kill. So whether that be chlorine, ozone, whatever's going on, they want to know that the CYA is not affecting the kill of the sanitizer. So we can look to that as kind of a guideline for us in the residential market. The goal is to have the healthiest water environment possible. Personally, I've never been a fan of stabilized chlorine. As much as I sell it, I am pro unstabilized chlorine methodologies, being that CYA over time is going to increase with stabilized chlorine, making the pools harder and harder to manage. And there's no solution. People have attempted to come out with solutions, and I shouldn't say there's no solutions. There's two solutions. You either have to drain the pool or have an RO truck come out and filter that water, strip it of everything, and restart. So why put ourselves in that predicament when we can use unstabilized methods? Now, those unstabilized methods also have their side effects. Nothing's perfect, but there is solutions out there where we can manage the CYA level more effectively.
I agree 100%. And I think that's a conversation, John. What do you think that we need to obviously tackle and address into detail? And that might be just a whole podcast, just talking about, those effects. I think, and I go back to my beginning days and the lack of knowledge that I had with the CYA, and really kind of didn't pay attention to it, right? And the training that I got was really none from the standpoint of the CYA. And then years later, having to kind of look at it and go, man, now I need to put an action plan to figure out all these pools that have so much high CYA and I'm having a problem with. So I think that's a really big topic that we need to discuss. And yes, in the commercial, it's all regulated. You're checked, and if it's way out of balance, they'll shut your pool down. but we don't do that in the residential. So I think that's going to be a nice big topic that we need to get into.
Yeah, we got to dedicate at least a podcast, if not 2 podcasts on it.
I agree. So let's take a second here. I know that somebody was on here going, hey, is it time to take any calls in yet? So let's see if we can take a call. In the meantime, guys, we'll take a couple calls. Oh, and look at that. We already have somebody that jumped on. So, hey, let's talk to Big Family Pools here and see what question he's got. Hey, Dean, you're on live. How you doing?
Hey, thanks, Edgar. John and Jared, first of all, 2 of my mentors in this business, so thanks for all that you guys do. Jared, I have a question for you. I was looking into ozone last spring, and I had a long conversation with Beth Hamill. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her or not, but she's kind of an ozone expert. And she basically told me that ozone on the suction side of a pump is basically garbage and a marketing gimmick. You're not going to get the value. You're not going to get what you're spending for it and the benefit that you want. So what I'm curious about is on the AOP system. I really want to learn more about that. Do we know how effective that ozone really is? Because she told me I was going to have to spend a couple $1,000s for a system to really get the benefits of ozone.
Yeah, so to comment, I am very familiar with Beth Hamill. I was fortunate to work with her in my early years as she was with Dell Ozone in our first go-around with them. She is definitely one of the authorities on ozone technology. I don't know many that have her level of knowledge. So anytime you can get on the phone or correspond with her, you're doing yourself a lot of justice. As far as suction side ozone goes, I am also a believer return ozone is the way to go. The suction side, as much as people will make the argument that you're getting the ozone into the system and the filter can be used as a chamber, I think some of that is a stretch. I also do not like the fact that going into the front of the pump pot puts you at a higher risk of a suction side leak. And then you're introducing air into the system and air into the filter, and that can be awfully dangerous. So I prefer to recommend return side for a lot more than just is it as effective and no or yes. There's other things that should be considered. I hope that answers the first part of your question. The second part was the AOP technology and its effectiveness. The larger the system, the more grams outputted of ozone and the more effective the system will be. There is systems out there, that start just under the $1,000 mark, and then they kind of go up from there within the Dell world. The older style AOP 25 from CMP Dell was a side stream unit, so it used a 3/4 inch line going through it, so you weren't getting 100% effectiveness. The new models are all full flow, 2-inch in and out, so you're going to have all the water run through it, increasing the effectiveness dramatically. Until now, the AOP 50 was the model in which was full flow, and you're right, you would have to have spent several $1,000s to acquire a system that is adequate for effectiveness.
Yeah. John, I don't know about you, but I'm sitting here having this conversation and that pool geek talk just kind of starts running through the veins, and I start getting so excited about all this kind of stuff because there's so much to learn from it still. And I think for your average guy,
and I want to say something and kind of
absolutely.
We got like 10 minutes left, and I'm like, my God, we can't do it.
Yes. So I think, and this is a great podcast from the standpoint that there's been so many things that have been brought up that we really need to dig into and kind of break down. So I'm just sitting over here just so excited, and we're just barely touching, the top of it and the tip of that conversation. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And with me especially, I mean, just having Jared, I really appreciate you being on, and you bring quite a different perspective And I know you kind of touched on it at the beginning, most of the people we talk to will always represent one company, and they have one product or they have one thing that they talk about, which is fine and great, but you have, it's unique because you represent so many different products and you have a perspective on pretty much everything, and you are versed on a lot of things. And I would love to be able to have you back so that we can talk about, ozone and UV and geek out a little bit more into these topics, because I know there's a lot more that you have to share, or you have to offer to give everybody else, especially when it comes down to these new and exciting ways to take care of a pool. Because we're all doing this, and we're doing this podcast. We're having these talks. We're doing the Instagram. We're having these conversations because we want to become better, right? And this is the way, right? This is the future, and how to take care of pool chemistry or pool water.
And I think guys need to stop and think and figure out what they're going to do. I think this is the perfect time that it gives everybody the opportunity to go, we need to do something different. But before we do something different, let's learn about everything individually, because every product that we use has a side effect. So whether you use chlorine, you deal with the salts, your cal hypo, you deal with the calcium hardness, you deal with all of those. And I think that whatever product they use is going to be the best product. All they have to do is be able to manage it and have a game plan to manage it, right? So if you're using cal hypo, you know that you might deal with calcium hardness level, and you can adjust for those, right? You use the LSI, you can run that a little bit higher with your alkalinity a little bit lower. But the goal is really to get that education out there. And what I love about it, Jared, is that just like John said, you have so much knowledge all around with all these different products. And the fact that you are, you really truly give your opinion. You don't sit there and go, this is the only way to go. This is just what you have to use. And that's so refreshing in our industry.
Yeah, the products for us come and go. Manufacturers get acquired, they change, the product gets made better or sometimes worse. But all in all, I'm a young guy in the industry, plan to be around for 30 or 40 more years. The more I can help you guys find the right solution for you, the better off you are, and ultimately I get to prosper along with you if you're successful with that. And I think that's a winning formula. So no, I have no interest in telling you you must buy a salt system, or you must buy a Rollichem pump, or you must buy Pool RX, or any of the other things. I think they can all be put into a formula that gets you success. But understanding how they work and why they work is very important. And you nailed it. Cal hypo is one example where understanding that the inverse is running the alkalinity on the low side, and you may find that even in very high calcium conditions, you have excellent balanced water, and you don't have the calcium leaching out, whether that be onto your tile line, your stone, whatever it may be. So discussing those in detail, as you guys mentioned, is important, and there's many experts out there for each one of these topics. So I'm glad I can help cast a broad net, but I do feel you'll find experts in each space, and Dean mentioned one of them, Beth Hamill on the ozone side. There's also, I'm fortunate to work with Alan Wing on the Cal Hypo CCH Pulsar side. So there's a lot of good individuals out there that I hope I can help connect people to as they reach out to me that can offer even more expertise than I have. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think from this podcast, we have very quickly figured out that there's a lot of other topics that we need to dive into very deep and break those down. So, Jared, if somebody's listening out there and has questions about any of your products or is interested in learning about them, what's the best way for them to get that information? What's the best way for them to kind of communicate with you? And it could be anything, right? If they want to talk about the Rollichem or the salt system, or they want to talk more about this UV, what's the best way for them to reach to you guys?
Yeah, and by all means, anybody can call me with a question, even if it's a product we don't represent. I am open for a phone call about, hey, I'm having a problem pool. what's your thoughts? If one of my products makes sense for that, awesome. But if it doesn't, I'll steer you in the right direction to come up with the solution. So my line, my email, my everything is open to anyone. As far as Alpha West Marketing Group, we have 9 individuals that are excellent throughout the West Coast. You could go on the website and look up the rep for your area. We're also on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, so we can be reached through all those different forums. But the phone numbers and emails are listed on our website. Feel free to call or email us, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
That's awesome. So, hey, guys, let's go take a pause for just a second, and we'll come over on the other side. John, I want to get your thoughts. Jared, I want to get your thoughts on today's podcast as well.
The Hyper Pole from Ultimate Pool Tools is a pool care pole designed by pool professionals for pool professionals, featuring precision-crafted carbon fiber and stainless steel construction. Go to ultimatepooltools.com or Instagram at Ultimate Pool Tools.
And once again, guys, thanks to our sponsors for our podcast. John, what are your thoughts on today's podcast?
I think it was fantastic. And I also think we just barely scratched the surface. You know, there's just so much more we can talk about. And it's kind of good giving it in little pieces like this because it gives our viewers and our listeners and the people that follow us time to sit back and think of questions to ask so that they can convey that to us so that we can bring them up on the next podcast and kind of answer them and get to the nitty gritty of things. Because, you know, especially when it comes down to UV, AOP, and ozone, there's a lot of intimidation when it comes to those systems, simply because it's something different and new and people aren't really accustomed to it. And more knowledge on that, especially with COIA. I mean, COIA has been around forever, and we're just barely now starting to really knock it as an industry, where people are really starting to understand, hey, look, you know, there's an issue here, and you might not see it immediately, but these long-term issues that you're having, how you can now correlate it with some of the things or some of the practices we've been doing all along, like over conditioning our pools. And I love it. And like you said, you know, geeking out on this kind of stuff is what I live for and what I love to do. And I'm looking forward to more podcasts like today. And I just want to thank Jared again for his time and all his knowledge.
I think out of this podcast, gosh, I could think of 4 things right off the top of my head that we need to dig into deep and have those conversations. And even when we talk about the CYA, it's just not, I think most people think, oh, the CYA, I just get a chlorine lock. But I think there's a lot of other effects out there that kind of nobody talks about. And that's what we like to do, right? We would like to talk about the things that nobody likes to talk about. So I think we need to definitely do that. I think we for sure have to get into the details of the UV and the ozone and, you know, how do we break that down? And you had some great questions with regards to, hey, I have an ozone there. How do I know if it's working or not? And I did have somebody ask me that. And so those questions need to be answered for those guys that are getting out there, especially if we're trying to tell them, hey, you need to change because of the shortage of the chlorine. Now's the perfect time for them to educate themselves and then educate the customer and be able to sell that to the customer as well. So I think it's an overall great time to have all these conversations. So Jared, what are your thoughts?
Well, I can't believe how fast an hour went by. I feel like we had a very casual conversation, just as mentioned, casting a broad net over all these different options. I appreciate you guys allowing me your forum to talk. And I look forward to being invited back to take a deep dive into some of these options and maybe getting more technical for those that want it. But I think we did a great job introducing all the different options that are out there, so people can seek the 3 of us out and some of the additional people that have some good experience to find the right solution for them as we move into 2021 and, you know, continue to see lack of supply, I should say, of trichlor product out there on the marketplace.
Great. So we are going to have you on for sure again if you give us the time. So we'll definitely reach out to you. I want to thank everybody for their time today. I want to thank all those listeners out there that are sitting there listening. I can see you guys. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Our goal is to help as much as we can. So John, once again, Jared as well, thank you so much. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Yep. See you next week.
Bye, guys. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Pool Nation podcast. You can listen to us live every Friday here at 8 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Central, and 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find us at Pool Nation or poolnationpodcast.com or Instagram at pool.nation.